Darth Maul survives. Darth Maul gets sliced in half and falls down a reactor shaft in The Phantom Menace. He should be dead, but he shows up years later in the Clone Wars with spider legs, very much alive. The dark side kept him going. His wounds cauterized instantly, so no bleeding out. He grabbed onto a trash chute on the way down and landed on the junk planet Lotho Minor. His rage and hatred literally refused to let him die. For years he lived half-mad with mechanical spider legs until someone found him and fixed his body. The official explanation is that Maul drew on his master's dark side lessons to harness his rage and stay alive. This established an important Star Wars rule: Sith can survive through pure hatred alone. Never assume a Sith is dead unless you've vaporized their brain. Midichlorians versus Force mysticism. The Force was always this mystical, spiritual energy in the original trilogy. Then, The Phantom Menace introduces midichlorians, and suddenly you can measure Force power with a blood test. Fans hated it. But George Lucas always had this idea in his notes from the beginning. Midichlorians aren't the Force itself, they're just the interface. They let living beings connect to that mystical energy field. Qui-Gon says they continually speak to us, telling us the will of the Force. So the spirituality is still there. The midichlorians just explain the biology. The concept was so controversial that Dave Filoni and other Lucasfilm creatives spent years trying to clarify that the mysticism wasn't negated. The films never mentioned them again after Episode 1, which tells you exactly how well that went over with audiences. If you're enjoying these Star Wars mysteries, I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe. It helps the channel keep exploring more wild plot holes like these. Thanks. Jedi blindness to Palpatine. The Jedi Council sits on Coruscant for years with Supreme Chancellor Palpatine right under their noses. He's literally a Sith Lord. How do they not sense this? The dark side was actively clouding their vision. Palpatine had a Sith shrine hidden beneath the Jedi Temple itself, its dark energy scrambling their Force senses. Yoda even says, "The dark side clouds everything." The Jedi knew something was off. Mace Windu admits their abilities had diminished, but by the time they figured it out, Order 66 happened. Palpatine played the long game, and the Jedi were looking for a warrior, not a politician. Canon lore reveals the shrine was ancient, predating the temple, meaning the Jedi had been building on corrupted ground for 1,000 years. They were literally sitting on top of their own blindness. Vader lets Obi-Wan escape. In the Obi-Wan series, Vader has his old master at his mercy. He drags him through flames, tortures him. Then, a wall of fire separates them, and Vader just stands there. He lets Obi-Wan get rescued. For a guy obsessed with revenge, why? Vader wanted to prolong the suffering. Killing Obi-Wan quickly would be too merciful. He spent a decade fantasizing about this. Letting him escape means Kenobi lives in fear and pain until their next meeting. Vader could have walked through that fire, or used the Force, but he chose the hunt. This is pure Sith psychology. They don't just want victory, they want their enemies to suffer first. Vader's line, "I want you to suffer," wasn't just dialogue. It was his entire strategy for the series. R2-D2 never reveals secrets. R2-D2 knows everything. He was with Anakin throughout the prequels, never got his memory wiped, and served Luke in the originals. He knows Vader is Luke's dad, knows Leia is Luke's sister. Why doesn't he tell anyone? R2 has owner protection protocols. He believed revealing painful truths too soon would harm Luke, so he literally refused. He only speaks in beeps anyway, so he couldn't exactly blurt it out. And honestly, Obi-Wan and Yoda were guiding Luke's discovery. It wasn't R2's place to interfere. The Expanded Universe novels revealed R2 had specific instructions that compelled him to withhold certain information until Luke was emotionally ready. Bail Organa likely programmed these safeguards when he ordered C-3PO's memory wipe. C-3PO can't shut up, but R2 knows how to keep a secret. Anakin's Padmé dilemma. Anakin has visions of Padmé dying in childbirth. He's desperate to save her, so he turns to Palpatine and the dark side. But Padmé literally tells him the solution on Mustafar. "Come away with me. Leave everything else behind." If he'd just listened and run away, she would have lived. But Anakin rejects that. His judgment was clouded by fear and the dark side. Palpatine convinced him only Sith powers could cheat death. By the time Padmé offers escape, Anakin's too far gone. His ambition and paranoia took over. He causes the very future he feared. This is classic Greek tragedy. The prophecy becomes self-fulfilling because the hero tries to prevent it. Anakin's tunnel vision and pride made him ignore the simple solution that would have saved everything. Lightsaber's plot armor weakness. Lightsabers melt blast doors and slice limbs like butter. But when main characters get hit, they mysteriously survive. Finn gets slashed across the back by Kylo Ren. recovers by the next movie. The rationalization? Lightsabers cauterize wounds, so if they miss vital organs, survival is possible. That's how Darth Maul lived. But the real reason is plot armor. The story needs them alive, so the lightsaber conveniently misses important spots. Star Wars isn't going to dismember every hero on screen. Certain materials like Beskar steel and energy shields can canonically resist sabers, giving the writers some wiggle room. The general principle is clear. Don't assume a character is dead unless you saw them die, and even then, maybe not. So yeah, lightsabers cut through anything except narrative necessity. Empire Strikes Back timeline paradox. Luke trains with Yoda for what feels like a few days, while Han and Leia escape the Empire. But by the end, Luke has serious Jedi skills. How? The timeline is way longer than it seems. Luke was on Dagobah for 6 weeks, maybe 2 months? After the Falcon's hyperdrive broke, Han had to fly to Bespin at sublight speed. Space is huge. That journey took 6 to 8 weeks. All that time, Luke was training intensively with Yoda. The movie compresses it for pacing, but in-universe, a couple months pass. Official canon sources confirm the Falcon's food stores could last about 2 months, which gives us the timeline. A book called From a Certain Point of View, The Empire Strikes Back even has Yoda reflecting that Luke has been training for a few weeks. So Luke's training wasn't instant, just still very brief by Jedi standards. The Death Star's swift return. The first Death Star took 19 years to build. Death Star 2 took about 4 years, and it's even bigger. How? Palpatine started immediately after the first one exploded. He threw the entire Imperial war machine at it. Dozens of planets were stripped bare for resources. They had experience now. This was an improved model, using lessons learned. They used legions of construction droids working 24/7 in segments. Plus, they prioritized the super laser and shields first, leaving lots of the station incomplete. That's why it looks half-built in ROTJ, but the weapon works. Moff Jerjerrod oversaw the project and ordered it built in segments so self-replicating droids could swarm the superstructure simultaneously. Think of it as Imperial crunch mode, with unlimited resources and zero regard for worker safety. No one believes in the Jedi. In A New Hope, Han calls the Force a hokey religion. Imperial officers scoff at Vader's ancient religion. But the Jedi were prominent generals just 20 years earlier. How did everyone forget? Even at their peak, there were only 10,000 Jedi in a galaxy of quintillions. Most people never saw one. After the Clone Wars, Palpatine wiped out their legacy. Records destroyed, the temple converted, history rewritten. Over 2 decades of propaganda, a whole generation grew up hearing Jedi were traitors or frauds. Memory fades fast when aided by censorship and fear. Former Separatist worlds remembered Jedi as enemies, while former Republic worlds were told the Jedi betrayed them. The Empire actively seeded the narrative that Jedi were charlatans or frauds to prevent martyrdom or hope. They manufactured collective amnesia. From a certain point of view, Obi-Wan tells Luke that Vader betrayed and murdered his father. Then Luke learns Vader is his father. Why didn't you tell me? Obi-Wan's defense? What I told you was true, from a certain point of view. He argues that when Anakin fell to the dark side, the good man died. So Vader did metaphorically kill Anakin. It's the epitome of Jedi lawyer speak. Behind the scenes, when Star Wars was made in 1977, Vader wasn't Luke's father yet. That was invented later. So this line is a retroactive fix. In-universe, Obi-Wan feared the truth would compromise Luke emotionally, or drive him to Vader. Some expanded media suggests Kenobi did feel guilt over the lie, but believed it was necessary to protect Luke going into that first confrontation with Vader. Later, Luke uses the same phrase with Rey about Ben Solo. It's become iconic for explaining away inconsistencies in Star Wars. C-3PO was never recognized. The prequels show that Owen Lars owned C-3PO and Anakin built him. Yet in A New Hope, Owen buys 3PO from Jawas and shows no recognition. Vader never acknowledges him either. Owen probably didn't hear 3PO's name during the sale. In the prequels, 3PO was gray. By A New Hope, he's gold. It's been 22 years. Protocol droids are common. Owen likely thought all these droids look alike. As for Vader, he and 3PO never really have a face-to-face. In Empire, Vader enters Cloud City as Chewie's gathering 3PO's broken parts. Vader's focused on Luke at that point. He probably didn't get a good look at the battered heap. Plus, Vader let go of his Anakin identity. A childhood project from 30 years ago? Not exactly top of mind. Legends provided an explanation in the comic Thank the Maker, where Vader does briefly recognize 3PO and has a reflective moment. But in canon, it's simply not addressed. Obi-Wan doesn't recognize R2-D2. Obi-Wan says in A New Hope, "I don't seem to remember ever owning a droid." But he fought the entire Clone Wars with R2 by his side. technically, Obi-Wan never owned R2, Anakin did. So he's not lying, but he definitely recognizes R2. Novelizations confirm it. Obi-Wan's being cautious and coy. If R2 is looking for him, something's happening. He doesn't want to spill secrets in front of Luke right then. Oh yes, this droid belonged to your father, who's now Darth Vader, is not a conversation he wants. It's classic Obi-Wan withholding information. R2 doesn't pipe up either because Luke doesn't speak droid. They both know each other, but choose silence. Obi-Wan even gives a little smile when R2 rolls in, as if privately amused. This is another case of, from a certain point of view, being used to navigate a retroactive continuity issue. Han doesn't believe in the Force. Han was alive during the Clone Wars, so why does he doubt the Force exists? Han was about 10 when the Jedi fell. His homeworld Corellia was on the fringes of the war. He likely never saw a Jedi with his own eyes. By adulthood, Imperial propaganda said Jedi were traitors or fairy tales. Han's a self-reliant cynic who trusts his blaster, not mystical energies. He's never witnessed someone use the Force, so why would he believe? Even Imperial officers who served during the Clone Wars sneer at Vader's powers. Han's stance is, I'll believe it when I see it. And as of A New Hope, he hasn't seen it. Han's personality is exactly the type who would dismiss the Force as simple tricks and nonsense, without proof. He grew up in a galaxy engineered to forget the Jedi existed. Lightsaber survivability keeps rising. Getting stabbed with a lightsaber used to mean death. Now it's practically a flesh wound. Multiple characters survived torso stabs in recent shows. The explanation? Medical technology got better. Back to tanks, quick surgical intervention, hitting non-vital spots. Also, species biology matters. Some aliens have redundant organs. Darkside users refuse to die through sheer hatred. But the real reason is storytelling evolution. If the narrative wants a character alive, they survive. Qui-Gon set the bar for lightsaber stab equals death, and everyone since has built up a tolerance. Even Lucasfilm creatives have joked about this, noting that characters now lose extra organs via clean wounds that are immediately cauterized. It's become such a trend that fans now assume any impaling is survivable unless explicitly shown otherwise. The Force works in mysterious ways. The Jedi forgot Force speed. In The Phantom Menace, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan use Force speed to sprint away from droidekas. Later in the same movie, Obi-Wan watches Qui-Gon fight Darth Maul, separated by energy shields. Why doesn't he use Force speed to reach them before the shields activate again? It would have saved Qui-Gon's life. The obvious answer is, the filmmakers forgot about it or needed Qui-Gon to die for the plot. In universe, maybe Force speed drains energy and Obi-Wan couldn't sustain it. Or maybe the Force works when the script needs it to. This is one of those abilities that appears once, solves a problem, then vanishes because it would break too many future scenarios. Fans noticed this contradiction immediately, and it's become one of the most cited examples of inconsistent Force powers. Either way, it's a clear case of plot convenience over internal logic. Anakin's Immaculate Conception. Anakin has no father. Shmi Skywalker says there was no father. He's a virgin in the Force, born from Midichlorians. It's the Star Wars version of Immaculate Conception. This makes Luke, Leia, and Kylo Ren part cosmic energy. They're descended from, essentially, a Force miracle. It doesn't totally make sense scientifically or narratively, but conceptually, it explains why Anakin is the chosen one. He's literally created by the Force itself to bring balance, though whether that means destroying the Jedi or the Sith has been debated for decades. Some fans theorize that Palpatine or Plagueis manipulated midichlorians to create Anakin, and a 2018 comic seemed to support this before Lucasfilm clarified it was just Vader's dark side vision, not literal truth. The mystery remains intentionally vague. Luke's fast-track Jedi training. Traditional Jedi train from infancy for decades. Luke gets a few days with Obi-Wan, weeks with Yoda, and that's it. By Return of the Jedi, he's a knight. How? Between Empire and Jedi, about a year passes. Luke spent that time training himself. Current canon suggests he studied on his own and built a new lightsaber. He's also the Chosen One's son, so his raw Force potential is extremely high. He's a prodigy. Plus, Yoda says by ROTJ, no more training do you require. The core lessons were learned. The rest came from facing Vader and resisting the dark side. Legend stories detail Luke returning to Obi-Wan's hut on Tatooine and discovering journals with Jedi teachings. He spent that year in intense, self-directed training we never saw on screen. Life and death trials forged Jedi fast.
Which plot hole surprised you the most? Star Wars has been telling stories for almost 50 years across multiple creators, so some contradictions are inevitable. Thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.